I have some opinions.
So we're going to start, and I want to say good evening and welcome to everyone. This is Students Supporting Israel's event with Olga Meshoe. Did I express it right? Did I say it right? Great. Okay. A South African anti-apartheid activist. My name is Dalia Zager, and I'm the president of Students Supporting Israel in Colombia. I would like to welcome all of you who made it here tonight, along with our viewers who joined us through live stream. Before we begin, I would like to go over SSI's mission statement and ground rules for the event. Our mission is to be a clear, proud, and united pro-Israel voice on campus that strengthens the Zionist community, showcases the empowering story of Israel, and inspires a movement of coexistence on this campus that will allow Israel to become an organic part of the united Middle East. For tonight, we will soon listen to Olga's speech, and after that, we can turn to a Q&A. Please make sure that your questions are questions and not statements, and remain respectful. Now let me introduce Olga. Olga Meshoe, Washington, I'm sorry, I'm probably doing it wrong, I'm very sorry, is a South African woman whose parents experienced apartheid firsthand. She decided to speak up for Israel after realizing the country is regularly and wrongfully accused for the same horrors her family went through in South Africa. Through her work, she has provided charities, non-government organizations, and corporate entities with strategic advice and assistance on community and social development programs that are sustainable, have impact, and ultimately change lives. She sits as a director and trustee of several South African and international companies and trusts focused on community work. Olga is also a keen pro-Israel activist. She served as the chief executive officer of DEISI, International Defend, Embrace, Invest, and Support Israel, a non-profit organization headquartered in South Africa with a primary mandate to educate students on the truth regarding the Middle East. Olga has earned several acknowledgments in her career, including mention in the IFLR 1000 Guide to the World's Learning Financial Law Firms 2010, and respect of capital markets work, being named by Parable magazine as one of South Africa's 2011 influential young Christian leaders, and receiving the 2016 Jerusalem Award for the World Zionist Organization in recognition of advocacy for the State of Israel and the South African Jewish community. Definitely an interesting person to listen to, so please welcome Olga.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm mic'd up twice, so that should be fun. Thank you to Dalia as well as to the SSI students. It is a privilege and an honor to be with you here today. I am just going to tell my story. Yes, I've been doing this in terms of speaking with regards to Israel for about 2 years, but it didn't always start this way. And so what I thought would be interesting to do this evening is just to let you know why I do what I do and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way, and hopefully that will inspire you, most of all, irrespective of what may be going on with regards to the Palestinians and the Israelis, to be inspired to seek for the truth. We live in a culture, we live in an era where if it's popular, everybody's going to run around behind it, and many times we have no idea what we're running after behind. And we can't exist like that if we're really going to make an impact in any way. So I've titled my talk this evening, Zionism and I, and even though we're going to have Q&A at the end, you're more than welcome to raise your hands, ask me questions. I'm still learning as well. And the opportunity to learn from people like you who are on the ground at an institution as glorious as Columbia University would be an honor for me. DAISY International, like Dalia introduced me as, is actually an organization that my father started. I knew of this Israel country, father in the Middle East. I'm a Christian, and so as a Christian we got brought up with the Bible. You got to pray for Israel, you got to love Israel. And then Dad comes home and he's like, we have to start this organization, because he was in America and he saw this BDS. And BDS saying that Israel is an apartheid state. He was fuming angry, I'll never forget. He calls the family around the table and he was like, if there's going to be a response, yes, the world is responding. If there's going to be a response, it has to come from South Africans, because we went through apartheid, and it has to come from black South Africans. Olga's immediate response, it's not our problem. Dad, you're too busy, I'm too busy, they can sort themselves out, we will continue to pray. That was me. And he was like, no, I don't care, you're going to do this, and you're coming on board because I'm actually an attorney, back at school, but I'm an attorney. And he's like, we need your legal skills. So I'm like, oh, fine. So I begrudgingly get on the board of DAISY International, and then I started to read. And I started to take an interest in terms of what really is going on. I started to pay more attention with regards to the world and international news, and And then the more I dug and the more I learned, I was like, name, man, something's offish here. And then it was Operation Protective Edge. I had my first speaking engagement, and the long story is I was hooked. And ladies and gents, primarily hooked for two reasons. One, my passion to see justice being done, justice for all people. And secondly, my passion for Africa. And so I'm going to start my conversation with you this evening. It does feel like morning. It's been one of those days. In terms of explaining why Zionism, with regards to my heritage as an African, my nationality as a South African, my faith, my now, and my future. Here we have, ladies and gents, the map of Africa. Anybody identify Wakanda? It is a fictional country. I saw a post today, real story, Uber driver. Oh my gosh, because somebody who's from Burundi got into the cab. It's like, where are you from? It's like, I'm from Burundi. Is it near Wakanda? I watched it. It's a fantastic country. It's like, yes, it's from Wakanda. That's okay. But ladies and gents, Africa, an incredible continent. Do you know that in the end of the year 2010, it was recorded that Africa exported minerals as well as fuel to the value of $333 billion US. That is 7 times more in exports, legal exports, might I add. That is 7 times more in exports than Africa received with regards to external help. Africa, ladies and gents, supplies the world with more than 50% of the world's diamonds. We supply the world with more than 25% of the world's gold and 6.5% of natural gas. But when people talk about poverty and disease and hunger, corruption, who do they speak of primarily? Africa. 18 of the world's poorest countries out of the top 25, ladies and gents, are found on that continent, on my continent. This is where I come from, right at the bottom. My continent. But that wasn't always the case. And standing here before you as a young woman who knows that her African continent, as she's being portrayed now and as she's living now, is not the Africa that she can be. Go back to the 1950s and 1970s. And when you look at countries such as the Congo, Ethiopia, and Uganda, what do you find? You find Israeli technology helping those countries with regards to agriculture, medicine, and business. Cross over to Tanzania, Chad, Nigeria, what do you find? Engineering. Israeli engineering that assists with airports, the building of highways, universities, massive construction going on. If that's not enough, and these are just a few of these countries, Ghana, Malawi, Cote d'Ivoire, Israel was declared their #1 friend from the very first day of their independence from colonization. The Zambian kwacha was stronger than the US dollar and equal to the British pound. Then what happened? If you're a person of faith, you'll look at Genesis 12:3, where Hashem says to Abraham, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. If you look at world facts, what also happens, and you can link the two. All right, I understand from Daddy we're approaching midterms, and what happens in midterms, or at least in my life with midterms, is you get into study groups, and so you all sweat it out together. Now imagine having a study group where somebody promises you, I'll come and study with you, and you know that you want to be in their study group because they know what they're doing. But then somebody else comes and says, no, don't study with them, I promise I'll help you. And if I help you, then I'm going to give you X, Y, and Z. So you're like, okay, I won't study with, what's your name, sweetheart?
Tara.
I'm not going to study with Tara. Okay, I'm not going to study with Tara, I'm going to rather study with Davia. Because she promises that she's going to help me with that. But she's like top of her class, I want to be with her, she knows what she's doing. But because we grew up, I'm going to go with her. A week before midterm comes, she doesn't show up at our appointed study time. 2 days before, the night before, she doesn't show up. Ladies and gents, that's pretty much what the Arab leaders and the Arab nations did to Africa. Why do I say so? There's this relationship that's working and that's prospering with Israel. The Arab nations come along, and you can go read this in your history books in the 1970s. Promises were made, you got to do this, don't do this, the oil embargo, threats. I'm not going to go into all of the details because it's not a history lesson tonight. But the ties were cut. And what do we have happening on the African continent, ladies and gents? An African continent that desperately needs food, desperately needs water, agriculture, assistance with tourism, and so much more, and it's not happening. So when all of these accusations happen with regards to Israel, and I'll come with regards to is everything that's right, or rather is Israel always right? No. I'm not here to stand and say that Israel is absolutely perfect. She is not. And we'll talk about that a little bit better. But when all of this hoo-ha is being made, my question as an African is, what happens to all of Africa's challenges? Because so many world organizations, including the UN, they do amazing work. But when we look at their conversation with regards to Africa, I mean, with regards to the world, it's just Israel, Israel, Israel. And I'm like, what happens to Africa's challenges? Anybody want to take a guess where that picture's from? Sir?
I'm assuming somewhere off the coast of Libya?
Yes, sir. But what do you think's happening?
Some sort of immigration push, a fall of a boat, and we're trying to get to Europe somehow?
They are trying to get to Europe, but more so they're fleeing. Who's heard of the Libyan slave trade?
Yeah, in the north. I think CNN had a piece about it earlier, but it's totally been off the news for the past.
I was just about to ask, how long did that piece last?
It's like maybe 2 weeks, and it's still going on
If that. We all went on Instagram, all of us, I'm generalizing, but the world goes on Instagram, the world goes on Facebook, and makes a hoo-ha, yay. After years afterwards, years after this has already been happening, and then they move on to the next subject matter. Ladies and gents, you can find a well-bodied, a well-abled black African man, purchase him as a slave for $200. Today. Open-air slave market. I as an African say, okay, but then what about our problems? What about our challenges there? Anybody remember this? Bring back our girls. Hashtag movement. And yes, I'm being very sarcastic because I feel very passionate about this. How long did that last? How many of those girls have they found? Anybody know that there was a kidnapping of over 100 girls just this last week?
Yeah.
And then? So as an African, I'm like, okay, world, hold up a bit. Just hold up. When there's a nation, and when there are nations that are wanting to help us with regards to terrorism, Israel, before Boko Haram kidnapped those girls initially, Israel offered assistance with regards to intelligence, and the assistance was turned down for various reasons, which we won't go into now. So a country where ISIS has said, and this was told by reporters who fled ISIS, they accommodated him for a while, and then they told him to leave, but the only country in the world that ISIS fears is Israel. And if Israel's saying, hey, we're willing to help, my hand's going to go up and say, okay, let me learn more about this nation and see that they can help my people. My nationality, I've already told you that I'm South African. And when many people learn about South Africa, they think about the rainbow nation and the beautiful people that she is, and she is beautiful. And I say that if there's any country that you need to come to, after America, of course, but if there's any country that you need to come to, ladies and gents, it's Africa. Listen to me talking like an international. Excuse me, Africa's not a country. If there's any country that you need to come to, it's South Africa on the continent of Africa. Why? Because there are so many different cultures that exist there. Beautiful people, beautiful hospitality, the most amazing food, and I'm not just saying it because I come there, I'm saying it because it's the truth. But you think of South Africa, you think unity, and you think Nelson Mandela, and you think culture and color. And then you also think this many a times. I've been asked to say, but Olga, why do South African black students in particular, South Africans generally, why do they support Israel with regards to, why do they support Israel Apartheid Week with regards to the accusations that are made? My response is, I also would support them. I absolutely would. If I were to see pictures like this, and you were going to tell me that the same injustices that were perpetuated against my people, against black people, for over 50 years, was happening in another country, morally, yes, we've got a right. And morally, yes, we've got an obligation to stand up and make some noise and say that this is wrong, because it is wrong. How dare you separate and judge people based solely on the color of their skin? How dare you? But there's a problem. Because if you look at the facts, and this is one of the things that I started to do, that's one of the things that I challenge people to do, is unpack the facts, understand what the definition of apartheid is, understand whether or not that is happening in Israel, and come to a decision. And ladies and gents, Israel is not an apartheid state. And as a black South African who lived there, and as a black South African who still, with certain respects, experiences the evils of an institutionalized system that was there, I can very confidently and very truthfully say it doesn't exist. On that note, I'd like for us just to watch a video for 2 seconds. Actually, before we go there, I found this just before, in fact, after I sent my first presentation to Dahlia. Ladies and gents, this is an example of a permit back in the day. I literally found it 3 hours ago. There were different types of permits, because people like to say that Israel is an apartheid state because they need papers in order to cross the security wall, the apartheid wall. I'm not going to go into that tonight. But here's a real life example, and if you want a copy of this afterwards, I can get it to you. I'm going to read it to you because the writing is a little bit small. So it is addressed to a Mrs. Hannah, and it is in regards to the area of the land, the Glen Country Club in Camps Bay. And what is this permit for? It says to enable 18 members of the colored group, named on the reverse of the permit, to occupy together with white people on the 24th of February 1974 on the occasion of a wedding reception. So colored people, black people have to get permission to hang out with white people at a wedding reception. However, there are certain conditions. The conditions are that the coloreds mentioned may only come as coloreds and have their own separate area at the wedding reception. And they are not allowed to participate in any dancing that may take place. Just but one of the various types of permits, ladies and gents, that existed during apartheid South Africa. By law, I can tell you story after story with regards to real life examples that happened. And my challenge to anybody is go to Israel and find if that's happening, and if it is happening, well then Israel is an apartheid state. But ladies and gents, it's not happening. How do I zoom out here? Okay, so there's a video that I want to show, but it's not appearing. All right, it's okay. No problem.
Maybe Google it?
Huh? Yeah, you can Google it. Is there Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Okay, because we can watch it. We can watch it on my laptop. I've got my laptop there.
Do you want me to look it up and then see? Okay.
Because what happens is, ladies and gents, these are black South Africans themselves, youngsters and old people, who will, from their experiences, it's about 3 minutes, 4 minutes long, that'll tell you whether or not Israel is an apartheid state. Well, otherwise get my laptop. Oh, it's on there. Here? Yeah. So we'll put the microphone near the video and hopefully you can see it. Okay. Where's the sound here? Does anybody know where this is supposed to go? Here? Can you see?
Yeah.
Awesome.
The
Want to turn off the lights,
President
maybe?
is a Zionist Jew, and he supports the apartheid state of Israel.
When I hear that Israel is an apartheid state, when people make that accusation, depending on the mood that I'm in on the day, I either pack up
laughing or I get really, really angry because it's an absolute lie.
Right now, if you say Israel is an apartheid state, I won't believe because I've been to Israel. And it was awesome. We're South African, so we know what apartheid is.
You know, I was born under apartheid. I grew up and lived under apartheid. So when people talk about apartheid, they can't tell me things I do not know. I've been to Israel almost about 40 times, and I've checked Israel from all corners. I've looked at what's happening in the legislature, in the Knesset. I've looked at what's happening in the streets, and I've concluded that what happened in the South Africa that was under the apartheid government does not exist in Israel.
When people say Israel is an apartheid state, I don't understand what they're talking about. Because I've lived in apartheid. I understand those laws that were being enforced. I saw practical.
I've been a member of parliament, the South African parliament, for the last 21 years. During apartheid in South Africa, you could never have black people in the parliament. Black people were not even allowed to vote. You go to Israel, you find members of the Knesset who are Arabs and Muslims, members of the Knesset who speak against their own government. In South Africa during apartheid, when black people spoke against their government, they were charged for treason.
We couldn't go to the same schools. We couldn't use the same hospitals. In Israel, you have Arabs lying in a hospital next to a Jew. In Israel, you have people mingling on the streets, sitting on the same benches. In South Africa, you had signs. Whites only sit here. Whites only drink from this fountain.
Israel doesn't say that because you are not Jewish, you can't go to the beach. Israel doesn't say because you're not Jewish, you can't go and watch a movie. When we had an apartheid state, when we were in apartheid, that's what they said. You couldn't interact, you couldn't watch movies, you couldn't go to the beach, you couldn't shop in like a big supermarket if you were black during apartheid.
I've been to Israel 4 times, and I can say from my experience that what the media depicts about Israel is not true. It's not real. You know, the hostility that is said about the people of Israel is not there. You know, if anything, they're very warm, friendly, loving people.
Israel was awesome. Everything about it, from the people, the food, the place, the atmosphere there. It's beautiful. Before I went to Israel, I was expecting what I always see in the media. I was expecting to see a lot of shootings, bombings, and yeah, a lot of conflict. But when I went there, I actually saw the opposite. There was so much peace going to Tel Aviv, and you see so many young people actually having fun.
There's a lot of sentiment and business acumen that comes from Israel, for me, which kind of tells me that there's something really important happening there.
As a black person, to actually find out the truth, is like you taking something so painful for black South Africans and mispresenting it for either publicity, for directed hate, and then repackaging it and say it's apartheid. Not cool.
If the media and everybody else that's on their side was trying to actually accomplish something that was going to give hope, that was going to give life, that was going to encourage peace, maybe let's have a conversation on that. But how dare you take that and use it to incite violence and use it to incite and encourage the destruction of a people just because you don't like them? It's disgusting. And the world needs to recognize that you are not only doing an injustice to the people that are in the Middle East, you are making what our parents went through, you're making a struggle a mockery.
When you look at what's happening in a lot of Arabic countries in terms of black people, you find them being oppressed. And nobody's paying attention to them or bringing that to mind. And that brings to me, or says to me, that there's bias reporting.
Don't take what you're being fed. Don't take what you read in newspapers. Don't take what you read or what you see on news, rather. Go there and educate yourself. Open a book, a history book. Open a current book. Open anything that actually speaks truth. I got an opportunity to actually go to Israel and seek truth for myself, you can say that. And it was mind-boggling to see just the misconceptions and just how it doesn't add up to what we see on TV.
To my brothers and sisters, specifically in South Africa, specifically like me, from Black, this war is real. It's a war for our history. It's a war for another nation's survival. There was once a time when people didn't want us to exist, when they didn't believe that we had a right to anything. And if we really want to do justice to our legacy, to do justice to the challenges that we were able to overcome, then we'll not only want to stand in solidarity with Israel and with the truth, but frankly with any nation that's under threat across the world.
The one thing I always advise guys is wisdom is free. And that's what, for me, Israel kind of represents, is that wisdom, is that ancient
why I wanted you, thank you, the reason why I wanted you to watch that is that's a group of youngsters coming from different places and older people as well, who from their own personal experiences in South Africa have come to their own conclusions from their own readings, ladies and gents, that the Israel that is portrayed in the media, the Israel that is portrayed as being an apartheid state is not. So the challenge that I then have as a black South African is, how dare you, and I say it in that film, that short film, how dare you take my nation's history and manipulate it in order to accomplish your own political agenda? Like, how dare you? This was the BDS logo banner that they used last year. You immediately see that. What does that do to your insides? It draws anger. Like, how dare they treat the children like that? These children just want a hope. They just want a better future. Of course they do. And that's also part of the reason as to why I do what I do. It's an absolute lie that in order to want to see the true liberation of the Palestinian people, the true liberation of the Palestinian children, that you have to be anti-Israel. If you really love them, if you really want to see their liberation, if you really want to see human rights increase, grow, not just in Israel, but across the Middle East, ladies and gents, then you will want to see the conversation move away from just total bias with regards to Israel and involve all parties that are around the table, including leaders of the Palestinian people, and I won't go into there tonight, that are the main perpetrators of the abuses that are experienced by their own people. Why now? But before I go there, a picture of a very famous man, our former president, Nelson Mandela. When people have the conversation with regards to Israel and the Palestinian people, they like to quote this, and he did indeed say this. We know too well that our freedom, he's talking about South Africa, is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. How many of you have heard that statement being bashed around? And it's true, it's right. There needs to be the freedom of the Palestinian people. What's interesting though is, I'm sure they haven't shown you this line from his speech before. I cannot conceive of Israel withdrawing if Arab states do not recognize Israel within secure borders. He said that. Nelson Mandela also said, if you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy, then he becomes your partner. Nelson Mandela said, and this he said when he went to Israel. So when people say, don't you dare go to Israel, and they tell that to the people in my country, and I'm like, reverse apartheid. Because during the apartheid system, they told us as black people where we could go and where we couldn't go. And now in democracy, you still want to tell me where I can go, where I can't go. But nonetheless, President Mandela went to Israel because he wanted to see it for himself. And that's what I challenge absolutely anybody to do, everybody to do. Go and see it for yourself. And once you've seen, ladies and gents, once you've done your own homework, absolutely, then come to a conclusion of your own. So he goes to Israel, the whole world is hana, 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 hana. And he was like, hold up. To the many people who have questioned why I came, I say Israel worked very close with the apartheid regime. I say I've made peace with many men who slaughtered our people like animals. There's a difference between working with their regime, and there were some parts where Israel did and they made right. There were many nations, including the US, that did some stuff, but then also that helped us. Okay? But Nelson Mandela says we've made peace with men who slaughtered, killed, butchered South African people like animals. Israel cooperated with the apartheid regime, but it did not participate in any atrocities. He also said, great anger and violence can never build a nation. We are striving to proceed in a manner towards a result which will ensure that all our people, both black and white, emerge as victors. I had a conversation the other day when somebody challenged me with regards to the apartheid narrative, and I said, okay, fine, forget what they were saying or what you want to say. Let's look at the process that was followed. When President Nelson Mandela, or he wasn't president then, but in the liberation movement, how did they behave? How did they react? How did they respond? Ladies and gents, one of the main things, they understood the rules of international law. You don't go for innocent children. You don't go for innocent civilians. Look at the attitude that he's espousing as he's speaking. It's that great anger and violence can never build a nation. We are striving to proceed in a manner towards a result which will ensure that all our people, both black and white, emerge as victors. Is that the same attitude that is being brought to the table from the other side? No. So if we want to follow then the same route, if that's what people want to do, well then let's do it the same way. So don't use my history and then twist it and manipulate it so that you get your own way. My faith. If you look at statistics, ladies and gentlemen, in Iraq, Iran, Syria, many other nations, also in the Middle East, Christianity, a lot of other religions apart from Islam are in the decline. Israel, the only place where religions can practice openly. You can be who you want to be, what you want to be, where you want to be. Doesn't mean you're going to be popular, but there's a difference between popularity and living. I would rather publicly share my faith, be unpopular with a few people, but rather live. You're welcome to Google on the internet. You'll see today executions of Christians being burnt on the stake. Why? Purely because of their faith. In Bethlehem, early 1980s, 56% of the population there were Christians. Any guesses as to how many today?
5.
It's around 5. West Bank overall, 2. People complain about the fact that Israel is a Jewish state. True, but what's the population of the Jewish state? How many people comprising the Jewish state are Arabs or Muslim?
2 million.
How much percentage? Yes, ma'am. Close on 25%. Ladies and gents, if we're talking about democracy and freedom of religion in the Middle East, then let's have the full-on conversation. So because I want to be in a place and I want to take care of my brothers and sisters and advocate for their peace and security in the Middle East, then absolutely I want them to be in a place where they'll be able to freely worship as they want to. And that place, ladies and gents, is Israel. My now and my future. We talk about universal human rights. These 2 pictures, and again, ladies and gents, all of this information is widely available if you just go and study and read. Freedom of speech, pretty much non-existent in Gaza. Picture of a man being dragged behind. How dare you open up your mouth and say something that's not befitting with regards to the narrative of the ruling government there. Democracy. Mohammed Abbas. When was he elected into power?
Almost 12 years ago.
For how many terms? How long was his initial term? How many years?
4.
For 4 years. So let's talk democracy. Let's talk human rights. Let's just talk the basics of the basics. So we've got a leader who is elected for a 4-year term who's now going into his 12 years. Why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we calling that into account? The billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of rands that are being given to the Palestinian people for their liberation, for a better life. Where are those billions landing up? Tunnels. Apart from tunnels, they're landing in the back pockets, ladies and gents. And again, this information is freely available. This information is the stuff that I started to discover. And I was like, but hang on, wait a minute, this isn't fair. It's not fair. So you don't even have to like Israel. If you love the Palestinian people, then you should be asking and saying, but where is all of the money going to? Why is that leader worth $2.6 billion US? Why? Why is another leader worth over $100 million? Why? Where is the money going to? You care about human rights? Well, then care about ensuring that the money goes to where it's supposed to go. Care about making sure that the people get the livelihoods that they want to get. Their leaders aren't giving them what they deserve. But what are they doing? Masking with the fact that it's Israel, it's Israel, it's Israel, it's Israel's fault. Ladies and gents, again, Israel is not perfect. No country in the world is perfect. So let's hold it to a standard that we hold all other nations of the world, but at the same time, let's hold these leaders accountable. For as long as we just go on and hop on the whole Israel is wicked and da-da-da-da, then we lose sight of the fact that there are people who really need our voices too. Human rights. I saw a statistic this morning that made me hurt. In the last 3 years in Nigeria, 16,000 Christians have been killed. That's 15 murders a day. You care about human rights. You care about human rights? Well, then let's examine these 2 as well. And again, the United Nations does a lot of amazing things. We're looking at the issue here with regards to Israel and the Palestinian people. UNRWA. How many people know How many, what they're responsible for? Okay, apart from the two in the front. Yes, sir.
Schools.
They're responsible for schools. They do. They are responsible for schools. Schools of whom? Of which people? Of the Palestinian people. This is a UN organ solely responsible for the well-being of the Palestinian people. That's all they do. Schools, housing, all of those things, which all people deserve. 5 million people is what now the count is in terms of refugee. The Refugee Agency, ladies and gents, is responsible for the rest of the world. My continent, because that's my first priority. 18 million refugees. Well, those are the latest stats that I got. I could be wrong. But those are the stats that I was looking at this morning. 18 million, and that's 25% of the people that they're responsible for. So overall, we've got 72 million, 5 million. 72 million, 5 million. My question is that fair? And then I also asked them, okay, but hang on, you were started in the year 1949. At that time, there were approximately 900,000 Palestinian refugees. And today, there are 5 million, but you were started to take care of them and make sure that they're okay and they're no longer refugees. So if the number's going up, let's just talk business, because I'm now in school for business. Your boss says, listen, I've got 900,000 people that need help. I'm setting up an NGO or an NPO to take care of them. You bring him a report that a couple of years later, over 50 years later, you know, the challenge that we had, the 900,000, 800. Well, you see, it's increased to 5 million. How? Why? They've got budget upon budget upon budget, ladies and gents. Why aren't we asking these questions? If we say that we care, if we say that we're really interested in human rights again, then why aren't we caring? Again, let's go back to the Libyan slave trade. That existed for how many weeks on social media? Now nothing. Syria today. Statistics, we're looking at 12 million Syrians that are displaced. 12 million. Yes.
Not to mention, UNRWA received 25 times more money than the entirety of Europe after World War II with the Marshall Plan, and that's accounting for inflation.
Not to go into it, because we can have a total separate discussion on this. How many of us have heard of the Mizrahi Jews and the Mizrahi refugees? How many refugees are there now?
No.
None. How much money did they receive at that time? None. Ladies and gents, these are the questions that we should be having. Outside of it, just ask the basics and say, okay, I care about human rights. You care about human rights? Okay. Let's put the facts on the table. Because for so long as we continue to argue about the situation up here, the people that really need it continue to suffer. Syria, let me repeat that figure for you again. 12 million. 12 million. Ladies and gents, it's not fair. Another reason why I do what I do, contribution to humanity. You cannot take away, again, like Israel or not, you can't take away the fact that in counterterrorism they are superior. I'm tired of the terrorism that's happening on my continent. I'm tired of it. If there's a country that says, we can help you, I need help, my country needs help, we'll take the help. Cybersecurity, truth, dialogue, democracy, innovation, and hope. Cape Town, South Africa, a beautiful city on the coast. We had D-Day in April. Thank God they moved it out to July. I pray that we never get there. What is D-Day? There's no water, not a drop of water, nada, nix, nothing. Now I'm talking my own language. Okay? I don't understand. And if you don't have water, what does that impact? Food. What does that impact? Sanitation. What does that impact? Health. And then there's technology and people that can help us, and we're saying we're not going to help. People must die. Again, in my country, many of the cultures, particularly the Xhosa culture, there's a season in which the boys go and they get circumcised. They're 13 years old. not the fact that it hurts only, but many of them don't come back. They don't come back because they die. But Israel has this gadget, prefect, very sterile, very easy to use, that can save lives. Yeah, politics, don't like Israel, forget about our people. Yeah, I have a problem with that. I have a serious problem with that. Again, contribution to humanity, all of these things, we've got Israel and Israeli technology to say thank you for. But work for them, ladies and gents, whether we like it or not. One of my favorite things, I love it, is when they organize protests on Facebook and protests on boycotts, yay, BDS, yay, start with everything else there. I put up a status the other day, ladies and gents, boycott Black Panther as well. Why? The creators of Black Panther were two Jewish men. This movie that is giving people like me such hope. Well, I've always had hope, but inspiration to be like, oh my gosh, there's somebody who's a superhero and who can do amazing things, or those strong women, whether you're a black woman or just a woman, you can see this woman doing this. All these characters, ladies and gents. The Jewish people, the land of Israel, has given us so much. So much. Let's take a step back and have a conversation and be like, okay, with their problems, let's talk this out. Let's have a little bit of dialogue here. They have given us so much. Wherever you may go and whatever we do, ladies and gents, there's Zionism. There's a piece of it in every single one of us. If you look at your faith, if you look at your culture, if you look at governance and you look at technology and you look at education and schools, in every single one of us, whether we like it or not, I'm a proud African. I'm as proud as they come. But ladies and gents, I know that within my DNA, there's a part of Zionism. I've got Israel to thank for a lot of things. And because of what she's done for my people back in the day, what she wants to do for my people now, especially when there are lies that are being told against her, you better believe that I'm going to stand up and say something. And that's my encouragement to you. Many times, and specifically those of you, and I'm going to speak to you specifically that are Jews, or that are of Israeli descent, I'm like, but what do we do? People hate us just because of the fact that we're Jewish, just because of the fact that we're Israeli. There really is no hope. Like, let's just shut up and go back. And my conversation to you is, don't give up. Going back to the statement that I made earlier when I'm asked and people say, but why do particularly black South Africans just jump on the bandwagon and they participate in these marches that are just about demonizing and that are hurtful? I'm like, half of them just don't know. They just don't know. And those that do know, bless their stupid hearts, move on. But there are so many other individuals, ladies and gents, that just don't know. So in your conduct, in your livelihood, in your living life, and in your contribution, continue to contribute. And in that way, then you'll win us over and win the world over. President Mandela again said, when people are determined, they can overcome absolutely anything. Who is that? No? She's an alumni of this school.
Oh, is this something to the water project in Central Congo?
And I can't show the video's on here, but I won't be able to show it to you. Savannah Ari, she founded and is currently still the CEO of an organization called Innovation Africa. Even that name makes me happy.
She's a good TED talker.
Even that name, Innovation Africa. She realized and was like, okay, there's a challenge in Africa. And as she went through the different challenges, she realized that the challenge of access to water and the ability then to go to school and all of these things can be solved with technology that uses the sun's power, solar technology, that can then pump water, get water so that girls can go to school instead of walking for miles and then coming back home. People can drink clean water. And what Innovation Africa is doing, under her leadership, an Israeli, an alumni of Columbia University, found a solution and is giving back the people of Africa and saying, here are the tools, you do it yourself. In a short number of years, they have impacted 1 million African lives. And it's not, one of the things that I love about Innovation Africa is that they didn't come and step in and be like, okay, you're going to do it our way, and we're going to stay here for forever, so that you can depend on us for forever. Because sometimes people do that. They want to help, but it's like, do it our way. Thank you, but no thank you. It was a case of, okay, here are the tools, stepping out, we'll help you, we'll monitor it as we need to, and impacting 1 million lives. A student from Columbia University and an Israeli, impacting Israel in that regard. In closing off, I just want to leave you with 3 of the things that she said. Sometimes good is not good enough. One of the things that she said and how she was looking at Africa's challenges and saying, but how can I help? She said, how can I help? Then they're like, okay, let's bring water. But then they realized that they weren't bringing the water fast enough. Then they looked at the sun and she was like, if we had just stopped and said, yay, we're giving them water. That was good. It's like, good isn't good enough. What more can we do? How can we think harder and dream harder and speak harder, ladies and gents? Even in your conversations, even in life generally, sometimes we wake up and be like, I've had a good day. A good day is a good day. You've done a good deed for somebody else, but sometimes good is not good enough. We've got to do more. Second thing that she said, sometimes the source of the problem is also the source of the solution. Many a times people have got their own issues when they have conversations with you. They have their own issues in life. And then when they come to you, they're challenging that anger and that bitterness or that ignorance, whatever they may be carrying. But if you understand where they're coming from, you may be able to win a friend. Quick story with regards to what happened to me on my university campus. The first time that I really experienced racism, so I had racism while growing up, but in my face one-on-one. Up until then, it was as a community, as a family, right? When you go places and you see how people treat you. I was at university, and it was, so at that time, apartheid had ended, but there was still racist incidents on campus, and it was elections for students, student leadership. And they were handing out flowers to all the girls, and I went up, and I wanted a flower, and they're like, no, you can't have a flower. And I was like, why? They're like, because you're black. I was like, oh, okay. And that's many stories that I can tell you. But cut long story short, I was elected onto the student council. And ladies and gents, by learning, making the effort to learn the Afrikaans language, because I realized that they were feeling threatened. Now it's the democratic South Africa, nobody likes the white people anymore, nobody likes Afrikaans. They were feeling threatened. So what did Olga do? I learned their language and I spoke to them in Afrikaans. Can I tell you that I could call a meeting at 6 a.m. and I would have the most Afrikaans young men come to my meetings. Why? Because they realized that actually there's something in us that she's interested in. So sometimes the source of the problem is also the source of the solution. And then lastly, with privilege comes responsibility. Those of us that know have an obligation and a responsibility to tell somebody else, to invite them to functions, to invite them to various opportunities to learn. I can't show you the Innovation Africa video, but ladies and gents, that is why I believe in Zionism. That is why I do what I do. For my heritage's sake, for my nationality's sake, for my faith's sake, and for my now and for my future. Questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm a fellow South African, so I loved what you had to say about South Africa being a very welcoming and warm country, and I strongly support that idea. Like you, I lived under apartheid for the first 18 years of my life, and so I can relate to many of the stories that you're reflecting upon. But also I should mention that I subsequently was appointed as the Chief Executive of the South African Human Rights Commission, so I now currently teach at Columbia Law School, of course, in economic and social rights. So very strong human rights background. And I want to pick on two of the narratives that you articulated and perhaps ask some questions about that stuff that I'm struggling with. So the first narrative is around this idea that apartheid South Africa is nothing like Israel, and you disabuse us of the comparison between the two. And I was trying to listen to the video that you were showing, but I recall one of the comparisons that were drawn by someone on the video was that during apartheid South Africa, black folks were disenfranchised, couldn't vote, whereas in Israel there's a system of democracy that allows all people to participate in it. And potentially one factual error is that during apartheid we had the tricameral parliament and tricameral system, which actually allowed black people, or some black people, to participate. And there was also the Bantustans and homelands, which allowed black people to participate. Now, of course, that system of democracy is incredibly flawed. But similarly, I would argue that if you're suggesting that there was no system of democracy under apartheid South Africa that included all people, in some ways it did. And so, therefore, saying that apartheid South Africa is not quite like apartheid Israel is potentially problematic. I would go so far as to say that the state of Israel is not only an apartheid state, but also a settler colonial state. And then the second point that I want to raise, and this is a difficult one for me, so I'm open about the difficulty I have even articulating this, is the narrative that most black South Africans, is what you're saying, are either misled, they don't know, this was sort of the language that you used, what's actually going on in Israel, and they're simply jumping on the bandwagon of BDS and other folks like this. And I'm very careful about this, the narrative that you are perpetuating, because it suggests a very sort of colonial perspective on the black African as stupid, as not knowing, as being misguided and misled. And you may inadvertently be perpetuating this idea that black people don't know what we are talking about. And why the majority of South Africans, black South Africans, are supportive of the South African democracy and opposed to Israel. And I suspect, and this may be an unfair statement, but often many black South Africans that I've encountered while I was working at the Human Rights Commission are continuously colonized through their minds, and they may have been liberated post-apartheid, but there's this attempt to try and reach whiteness, which I think you are trying to do by your proximity to Israel. And you may, in fact, be the person who's jumping on the bandwagon and become a puppet of the Israeli regime, rather than the other way around.
So, I of course let you answer, but I asked with no statements, and there was no question there. So I will let her respond in any way she chooses to, but is there a question?
Sure, there were two questions. Sorry, I didn't articulate that clearly.
It sounded like a lot of statements, which I'm sure she can address, but just making sure for everyone else, please let's ask questions. It's a discussion, not...
So I guess the first question was around this issue of Israel not being an apartheid state in connection to South Africa, and I was trying to draw the comparison with the system of elections. And the second was about this narrative that you may be inadvertently perpetuating what black people being stupid and that we don't know what's actually going on. And that's the solution you seem to be suggesting for us to be enlightened.
So, first of all, thank you for your both your questions, your comments, and your insults. I think if I'm going to start from the tail end, it's fabulous with regards to when somebody does then associate themselves in any way with regards to Israel. And that's what happens then. We are told that we are aiming to attain whiteness. Right from the beginning, I mentioned that these were my personal learnings. This is a journey that I, as an individual, have traveled. And my learnings and my studies and that. So when we say that again, so in an attempt to learn and be educated, I want to be white. Well, then I'd rather be accused of being a white person and be educated than just stay in my own space of being uneducated. That's what you're saying. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and not going into it because that wasn't the purpose of today, when you speak about colonialization, right? Israel being a colonist. I mean, it's... outside of the Bible, there are historical books, history. There's the ground that speaks from meters deep within the earth as to the continuous presence of the Jewish people for over 3,000 years in our place. So what's interesting is that it is very, I get confused, and I also studied law, I'm a lawyer, I get confused when a people are coming back to a place that is theirs, and then accused of being colonized. You know, like, but that's besides the point. So how if this is yours and you go back to what is yours, then you're going to be accused of. So, but that's besides the point. So I totally disagree with you in that regard. And then the first point with regards to, or maybe it was a second. I think it was a second in terms of inadvertently, you know, imposing the colonist mind that the black people that don't know are uneducated or uninformed, and So two things about it. It is a fact that the truth regarding Israel and the Middle East conflict, including the Palestinian people, and I'm very intrigued that you'd even mention or speak to any of the facts that I mentioned with regards to the Palestinian people, that generally, I'm speaking from a South African perspective, so I spoke South African, but we can speak about any nationality. There is a general misunderstanding with regards to the truth. Because the history books are attempted to be written, because the media, again, factually, isn't communicating the facts as they should be. So it is a general truth with regards to the information that is available that people are learning. Not just black people in South Africa, white people in South Africa, Americans, just generally, truth is lacking. Which is why there is a need for people who have come to a knowledge of what the truth is, to share that truth. And in sharing our truth, in helping somebody realize something, to then be able to say that we're trying to colonize that person's mind actually is an insult, because then any lecturer that stands in front of their students, aren't you then trying to do that with regards to your books? So we can go round and round and round in those circles. And then with regards to the first point, so you are 100% with regards to the different systems that existed in South Africa, and the Bantu states. But those Bantu states weren't even, those ones that couldn't even be recognized with regards to the bigger South African picture. So when you went and you voted within that state, you weren't voting for the South African government, you were voting for this imposed homeland that you were put into as a citizen of the bigger picture South Africa. That wasn't a right to elect the ruling government that was then going to be declaring the laws over you. When we go to Israel, if you are a citizen of Israel, you have the right to vote. In South Africa, if you are a citizen of South Africa, and a right to vote with regards to the Knesset, with regards to electing whomever's going to be president, you've got a right to vote with regards to the broader constitutional factors in that country. South Africa, that didn't happen. Now, if you're talking about even the fact that there may be or may not be the fact of the right to vote in Gaza and the West Bank, I mean, what democracy is happening there in any event? So on all of those, and I say with the most utmost respect, and we can have these dialogues, but again, the dialogues aren't going to come from the comments, the statements, and then lastly the insults. And again, I will say it, that if to be educated is to want to become like a white person, I mean, that's ridiculous in itself. Yes, sir.
Hi, Ms. Meshoe. First off, I want to thank you for coming here and for telling us all your story. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I come from a very traditional kind of...
I'm just going to remind questions.
Yeah, I'll definitely get to that. From like a Jewish community, and I've only really kind of grown up with one narrative to do with Israel kind of growing up. But regardless of that, kind of my question is to do with kind of current events in Israel in the past kind of few years. I'm sure you're familiar with it, that Ethiopian Jews, they have come to Israel, and a lot of them have reported that when they were in the camps, they were coming to Israel, they were given, kind of without their consent, without informing them, they were giving them Depo-Provera shots, which are kind of birth control shots that last up to 3 months. So I'm just wondering, you said your main allegiance kind of is to your country of Africa. So I'm just wondering, have you ever spoken about this? Do you have any feelings about it? Is it something that kind of comes to mind also when you think of Israel? You said yourself Israel isn't perfect, and I'm sure vast majority of people would agree with that. No country is perfect, definitely not. But we still kind of identify those problems and do our best to kind of improve them. And my feelings on Israel are very mixed. I'm very internally unsure of it myself. I'm still learning more and more every day. I go to different events on campus. I've come here today. I go to SJP events, Students for Justice in Palestine, J Street, all different kinds of organizations on campus to kind of be more informed, learn the different narratives, which I think is a very important thing. And I want to thank you again for telling us all your story. So yeah, I just want to know your feelings on kind of the negatives that the Israeli government, Israel in general, has done in the international community. How do you feel about this? How do you address it, in your talks, if at all?
Sure. And I appreciate your comments. So 100% starting again, Israel's not a perfect state. And we need to call out the wrongs that Israel does. If anybody, including myself, were to stand up here and be like, Israel, 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 perfect, perfect, I mean, you lose all credibility because it's a lie. There is no nation on this world that is perfect. So when there may be a policy, or there may be a practice, or there may be an attitude, or there may be accusations, or there may be concerns, including with regards to the Ethiopian Jews, and not just that. I mean, now there's a big hoo-ha about the refugees, right? Then the responsibility that we have, and that is what I've started to do. I'm more familiar with regards to the African refugee crisis than what was happening with the Ethiopians. But again, like I said, I'm still learning, because that happened before I started to do this more effectively, is to sit down and be like, okay, what are these policies? And why is Israel making the decisions that it's doing? And when those are wrong, like I've questioned to say, okay, but exactly with regards to the Africans coming out, is it just an immigration problem, like many countries in the world are having, like my country has? My country my country deports 250,000, approximately 250,000 immigrants a year. All right, so is it only Israel that's doing this? If it's only Israel, we've got a problem. If it's not Israel, it's a general challenge because immigration is a worldwide problem, all right? How are they doing it? Are they treating the Africans rightly? Are they treating them justly? Are they following the processes, including what constitutional provisions that they have in Israel? Are they doing it according to their laws? And if they are, then that's what the Constitution of Israel says, or that's what the laws of Israel says. And how are they compensating the people? Where are they sending them to? So absolutely, so asking these questions and calling out Israel where Israel is at fault. If I'm to give my honest opinion with regards to the African refugee crisis, in Israel, first of all, it's complex. Second of all, I don't like it. I don't like it in any nation. Thirdly, there needs to be accountability and conversation, not just with regards to Israel and European nations, America as well, but also the African nations as well. Why are these people fleeing Africa? Right? So how do we then as world leaders sit around the table and have these conversations? And the beauty of it is that when we start to identify what is really happening with the people, instead of just jumping on the bandwagon and screaming one narrative or two narratives and entirely demonizing Israel in total, we then lose the beauty and the time of the opportunity to be able to sit down and deal with these factors that actually have real meaning and where we can make a difference.
Can I just speak to that effect, because I've done some research? You're referring to the Mivtza Moshe, right? The transport of the Ethiopian Jewry to Israel? So yeah, so the PVC shots were actually not, it's a big fallible. There was one group that was sent from the area that they had found certain diseases. And in order to double check that
for the context of everybody, because we're
all
no, just take it a step back.
Yeah.
And just explain where it starts.
Sure. So roughly, I think it was in the early or like mid 80s. There was a big famine in Ethiopia, and they were cracking down. There's a large Jewish population in Ethiopia. They're Ethiopian by descent. Beit Israel, they're called. And Israel sent out, I think, one of the largest missions. They went to El Al, and El Al, which is the main national airport, sent all of their airplanes. They stopped all communication, all transactions. They all went to Ethiopia and lifted up a majority of the Ethiopian Jewish community into Israel. Throughout the duration of that process, there was one transport that they had found some sort of disease. I don't remember the exact particular name of the disease, but they, in order for the screening process to go through, they gave them PVC shots. It was one transport. They ended up after 3 months, there was no long-term effects. But yes, when you have new people, and they were going in to save them. It wasn't like they were going in and forcing them. They were going in to save them from death. That they wanted to screen them before they came in. So that's the response for that particular Mivtza Moshe.
Okay, just to respond to that, I'm not sure of any disease you need to give DPV to screen for.
Well, yeah, well, it's called.
Let's continue this conversation after. I appreciate the comments, but after. Any more? We have time for 2 more questions. You have a question? Go ahead, and then sorry, he asked for it before, and then you. Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to ask you. I'm a member of SSI. I'm an executive board member. I'm also from an Iranian family. I was raised Shia Muslim.
Iranian.
I'm oftentimes confronted with the idea that I'm a traitor, or that I've been told that you're a traitor to your people. Nobody's quite explained to me who my people are, but nonetheless.
So I was just going to ask you, who you traiting, but anyway.
Yeah. I'm curious how you respond to those. following the conversation and the question, the statements that I just heard, I'm curious if you could elaborate more on how it is that you respond to those types of more like personal.
Sure.
Like how do you manage to take that? Because oftentimes I'm either get very demeaning.
Yeah, it hurts sometimes. So it depends what environment I'm in. One, I'll either ignore you, or I'll throw the insult back at you. Because, and again, I'm a person of faith. There's a proverb that says you don't argue with a fool. So if you can see that this person's like an absolute fool, cheers, bye. Number one. Number two, I have to continuously remind myself why I do what I do and why I believe what I believe. I am convinced, reading, research, conversations, dialogue, that this is the truth. And there's going to come a time, and if you look at history, there's going to come a time where people will question, people will laugh, but the truth always comes out. Always comes out. And I'd rather be found to be on the side of truth, be called whatever names are I need to be called, and at the same time help my people, than feel sorry for myself. And I do sometimes, like 30 seconds. Okay, done, let's go. Because we have a responsibility to ensure that, first of all, truth goes out, that justice happens, and that the next generation, please God, of youngsters that come after us don't suffer the same way that we're suffering.
And we have one more there. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for your talk. It's very, very good. You obviously have a lot of experience, as a preacher, and I'm sure you get a lot from your father. And I'm bringing that up because I wanted to know why, the ACDP, which is your father's party, which gets about less than 1% of the vote, why it's number one is against abortion, number two is homophobic, rabidly homophobic, and number three, what I find interesting is you coming in and speaking about South African apartheid, and yet your father goes and decides to call for a state funeral for Mangophe, as if he wasn't an apologist for apartheid, as if he wasn't a collaborationist for apartheid, and
you're addressing many questions, and you're going to let her answer, and also be respectful to her family. So
That's okay. No.
Okay.
It's okay.
I'm
so this is typical. No, you're speaking about my father and me, but continue, sir.
And so there seems to be a reason why ACDP gets very little percentage of the vote and stuff, because we've gone way past the point where anti-abortion and homophobia is a political platform. So my question is that, maybe you should speak first about those kinds of questions and address those kinds of that kind of bigotry in your own family first.
So the first thing that I have to say to you is, with respect, so this is an example of when you shouldn't argue, but I'm going to argue because of the environment. You have made a now assumption that this is the only topic that I speak on. You have no idea of everything else that I speak on and about, which is fantastic. So we stand up, we see one person speak in one environment, you have no idea what I speak on, what I say, number one. Number two, if you were to do your homework about the ACDP, you would understand its policies, and you would understand its attitude towards, let's talk about homosexuality. There is a difference with regards to what it wants in relation to its policies and how it treats its people. If you did your homework, you would understand and see that there is a distinction between the two. I'm not going to educate you, that's your responsibility there. If you're also going to then look at the conversation with regards to abortion, you would also do your homework in relation to that. Now, there are differences with regards to people as to when life begins, and that's their choice. You speak about my father as an individual, I'll speak about him, and I'll speak about me as an individual. I have the right to believe that life starts at a certain point. And if I believe that life starts at conception, and that I will advocate for a baby to remain in her mother's womb for as long as that baby can, it is my right to do so. But again, if you were to then do your research in terms of the ACDP, you would understand when it then says if the mother's life is in danger, what can then be done. So instead of coming and being informed and contributing to the conversation that we have, all you have, and this is what they do, because they have nothing. So what they want to then do is attack you and attack your father. So he did his fabulous research on what he believes my family does or doesn't do, what my father's party does or doesn't do, calls me names, calls my father names, in order to make me shut up. No, sir, I appreciate you, and I'm going to continue to speak, and speak very boldly. Thank you, everybody. It was a blessing to be with you here tonight.